It is 9 o'clock and you have a quorum.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. It's a special board meeting number 9-24. It's Thursday, August 29th, 2024. 9 a.m. Mountain Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Time, and the meeting's being held on Zoom and at the Idaho Water Center. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Okay. Mr. Barker.
Here.
Vice Chair Cole-Hansen.
Here.
Mr. Gibbs.
Here.
Mr. McMahon.
Here.
Mr. Olmstead.
Here.
Mr. Stevenson.
Here.
Mr. Van Stone. Dell, you're muted. Mr. Van Stone.
Here.
Thank you. And Chairman Raybould is absent.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. The second item on the agenda is administrative rules.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Eric Bowe, the department's rules coordination officer, and he will update you and will probably be asking for an action when he's done.
Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Vice Chairman, members of the board. I'm here today to provide an update on our rulemaking activities. Following my update today, I will have an action item for everyone in the form of a resolution asking to adopt 2 chapters of our IDAPA 37 rules and authorize publication as proposed rules in Idaho's October administrative bulletin. We are well into our 4th year of the governor's zero-based rules review rulemaking efforts, and have concluded 4 rule chapters and drafted proposed rules along with supporting information for each chapter. They are IDAPA 370301, our adjudication rules, which are IDWR rules. IDAPA 370302, our beneficial use exam rules, again, IDWR rules. IDAPA 370309 are well construction standards rules, which are board rules. And finally, IDAPA 370303 are rules and minimum standards for the construction and use of injection well, what I'll refer to as our injection well rules. And those are, of course, board rules as well. So now I'll summarize. Well, I'll talk about key dates that we have upcoming for the proposed rule publication process. We have a DFM, Office of Administrative Rules, submittal due date, which is technically tomorrow on August 30th. We do have a little grace period potentially. We have our proposed rule publication date, which is going to occur on October 2nd of this year. Following that publication date on the 2nd of October, there is a 14-day hearing request period, and that would end on October 16th. And then finally, there's a 21-day comment deadline or period for comments, and that ends on October 23rd of 2024. With that said, I'll summarize the highlights of our board rules, proposed rules. For 370309, those are our well construction standard rules. The docket number is 370309-2401. The existing rule word count is 13,355. And the proposed word count is 12,578. This corresponds to a reduction of 777 words, or 5.8%. For the existing restrictive word count, the existing count is 234, and the proposed restrictive word count is 210. So it's a reduction of 24 restrictive words or phrases, corresponding to a 10.3%. The notice of intent to negotiate these rules were in Administrative Bulletin, volume number 24-4, page 54, on April 3rd of this year. Negotiated meetings occurred with interested parties and the public on April 25th of this year, and again on April 25th of this year, and then again on June 20th, 2024. As far as highlights, the proposed rule is very similar to the current rule, with one significant change. The drilling community had expressed concern regarding our low temp geothermal wells, well referred to as LTG wells. Originally, they're interested in potentially getting a change in the definition, which defines them as water having a temperature of 85 degrees up to just below 212. This would obviously require a legislative action to change the statute definition. However, after listening to their concerns, we were able to identify that the fundamental issue was not necessarily the temperature per se. It was more of the construction practices associated with that temperature. So in response to this, we removed prescriptive casing and sealing requirements pertaining to low temp geothermal wells when constructed in aquifers having a bottom hole temperature of less than 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Mainly, a lot the way the rules were before, they were geared more towards these high temp, high pressure LTG wells, maybe encroaching 190 or 180 degrees Fahrenheit. In many of these cases, the water is between, say, 86 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit. These wells, it is completely appropriate to construct these wells to cold water standards. And so that's what we incorporated. Revisions also expand the list of borings. We had wasn't clear in the current rules, but now the list of exempt borings includes horizontal borings drilled for the installation of utilities, and clarifies that geotechnical borings, both above and below the water table, are exempt. The exemption of geotechnical borings requires the borings to be properly decommissioned before the drilling equipment can be removed from the drilling location. And that's basically the highlights for the well construction standard rules. Moving on to our injection well rules, IDAPA 370303, docket number 370303-2301. The existing word count is 10,511 words. The proposed word count is 8,990. This corresponds to a reduction of 1,521 words, or 14.5%. The existing restrictive word count is 125. The proposed restrictive word count is 115, a reduction of 10 words, or 8%. The notice of intent to negotiate rulemaking was in Administrative Bulletin, volume 23-4, on pages 68 and 69 on April 5th of 2023. Since that time, we've held 5 public meetings on April 27th, 2023, June 1st, 2023, July 27th of 2023, and then again this year on May 15th of 2024 and July 17th of 2024. As far as highlights for the injection well rules, as Vice Chair and members of the board recall, last fall we ended up extending the ZVR rulemaking process for these injection well rules into 2024 with the intention of allowing time to collaborate with DEQ on rules regarding the injection of recycled water derived from municipal and industrial wastewater sources. This concept from these atypical sources it came to light at the beginning of the rulemaking process in 2023. So this extra time was incredibly valuable. Following multiple interagency meetings with DEQ, along with multiple meetings with interested parties, we were able to draft what we believe is sound regulation that provides a path for these activities, while in a manner that will be protective of the valuable groundwater resources. And that is captured in Rule 5504F and Rule 5506. Aside from the incorporation of that regulation, a lot of when we look at the proposed rule, there is a lot of strikeouts and underscores, and it's mainly due to reorganization. We had to reorganize and remove unnecessary definitions of regulation, and the current rule had a lot of information stacked under Rule 70, which made it quite cumbersome to review and use. So the proposed rule also breaks out the regulation in Rule 70 into a number of other rules, mainly Rule 30, Class 5 shallow injection well requirements, Rule 35, Class 5 injection well requirements, Rule 50, Class 5 injection well requirements, application processing, Rule 52, Class 5 injection well construction and operation requirements, and finally Rule 55, standards for the quality of fluids injected into Class 5 wells. That sums up our proposed rules. I took the liberty of drafting a resolution for the board to consider. I'll share my screen right now. This resolution would adopt the board's proposed rules and authorize the department to submit them along with supporting information to the Office of Administrative Rules Coordinator for publication in the upcoming October Administrative Bulletin. With that, I'm happy to stand for any questions the board may have. Thank you.
Okay, board members, are there any questions for Eric?
Madam Chair, I just have one generic question for Eric, and that is, in any of these changes that we're proposing to make, were there any significant comments from the public or from the users that the board should be aware of?
It's a good question. There were concerns during one of the drafts that we had on the language pertaining to Rule 5506. Rule 5506, injectate standards for the quality of recycled water derived from municipal or industrial wastewater sources. Originally, for deep injection wells, we had language in there that was that made it was an impossible hurdle for folks to meet. The way it was originally, we had it phrased in an effort to try to be, protective of the resource. It was essentially an impossible hurdle to overcome. We ended up rephrasing that terminology after collaborating with DEQ and working with the interested parties. And the language currently under 5506B for deep injection wells, everybody was happy with it. We all feel that it's protective of the resource and provides enough information for DEQ's involvement, which is required when permitting these recycled water applications.
So did we?
So with the law, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I say, so when the final version of the rule, does it protect the resource from with the same standards as the Groundwater Protection Act, or does it protect to background?
Originally, we had, I don't have the terminology in front of me, but we had it related to the background concentrations cannot be degraded, period. The challenge, though, there's a lot of nuance with these atypical sources of water. The number of analytes present go far beyond what's in the groundwater quality standards. And so we have to be able to look at it and determine, look at the actual source, since it's atypical. Most of the groundwater quality, or all of the groundwater quality standards, were established based on a natural typical source of what's anticipated to likely occur in that source. When you start to talk about municipal wastewater that's treated, or industrial wastewater, there's a lot of there's thousands and thousands of analytes, contaminants potentially in there. And so we have to be able to look at that source to generate the suite of analytes that will need to be checked. And that can be done, but we can't just purely follow the groundwater quality rule. Although it's consistent with the groundwater quality rule, we can't follow that in particular because the standards don't capture all the potential analytes that can occur in an atypical source.
Yeah, so one of the things I vaguely recall that we talked about when you brought this rule to us once before was, as you know, the world is changing and there is a much greater concern for these chemicals called PFAS that are often part of municipal wastewater, or can be part of municipal wastewater. And so can you address how that is being managed or discussed or regulated in this rule?
Yes. Our definition of groundwater quality standards includes the groundwater quality rule along with EPA's drinking water standards.
Okay, well, that answers my question then.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, any other questions?
Sorry, Madam Chair.
No, you actually asked the question I was concerned about, so thank you.
Madam Chair, Brian O here. So Eric, just another question along that same line. Are we, I have a lot of faith that Oregon would be very strict on this. Are our rules comparable to what Oregon or Washington would have? We're not less restrictive than they are.
That's a good question. All the states that have, the injection well programs across all the states have to seek primacy from EPA. Most of them are for class 5 wells, which are what our rules are focused on. To obtain primacy, all the states must be as stringent or more stringent than EPA. And so there's a certain hurdle. And so what you'll find in our review of, I think we reviewed 8 different states. I think 6 of them had primacy. A few of them did not have primacy, and they allow the federal or EPA to regulate injection in their states. They all meet the minimum threshold that EPA sets. And so they all are equally, long story short, they all are very equal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to consider the resolution?
Madam Chair, I will make the motion to approve the resolution.
Is there a second?
I'd second.
Pat seconded. Okay, I think we're ready for a vote. Does this need to be a roll call vote or just a voice vote?
This can be a voice vote, Madam Chair.
Okay, all in favor of this resolution, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Looks like the motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Eric, for the detailed, I guess, coverage of those two rules. Just out of my curiosity, what are some of the restricted phrases that had to be eliminated?
Let me check my list to make sure I don't miss one.
All right, I don't need to know. I just,
Oh, no, they're good. Shall, must, may not, prohibited, and required.
okay. Good to know.
So please don't use any of those words today, Madam Chair.
I shall not. Whoops.
Don't put those words in your toolbox.
All right, okay. Next agenda item.
Next agenda item is, we'll have Wesley discuss the ESPA managed recharge program conveyance contracts.
Good morning, Chairman Cole-Hansen and the rest of the board members. This is going to be pretty short. So the long and short of it is that the 5-year contracts that we have with the conveyance or for the conveyance of the board recharge in the lower valley basically have ended or will end by the end of this year. And so staff was looking at that, and the resolution that sets the lower valley fees was done in like 2019. For the upper valley, that was done in 2016. Obviously, we've gained a lot of insight and knowledge in that point in time. And so staff wants to kind of step back a little bit and take a look. Are there ways that we can improve our conveyance contracts that better fit the goals for the board and still work for our partners? One of the things we're going to be looking at is potentially a consistent payment structure in between upper and lower valley. Currently, they're different. The other thing that came up in talking with some of our partners out there, they want us to explore, is there a way of being able to analyze our payments? Because this can be somewhat of a problem for them, given a lot of them are nonprofits, and given the recharge can be very variable. If we can go years without and then a bunch of years with, this can create a problem with them that they get this big influx of money, and it's like, how do they handle that and still keep their nonprofit status? Obviously, that's going to take a fair amount of work and a fair amount of discussion. So what is in front of you today is it's more of a case of just letting you know what we plan on doing is keeping the status quo, only doing a 1-year contract, both upper and lower. In the upper, that's all that we can do by resolution. And then let you know what our plan is within the next 6+ months is basically kind of roll out of what we think is a good path moving forward, have those discussions with the board and our partners. So by the time we come around to next June, July, we have new standards in place. So that's basically it. Are there any questions?
Any questions from board members?
Madam Chair, this is not really a question. This is an idea. I don't know if this works for the nonprofits, but Wes, have we thought about or talked to the nonprofits about an idea that would say, look, well, you're going to get, let's say you're going to get $500,000 this year in a conveyance fee, and that's going to jeopardize the percentage of fees that you obtained from outside your your membership. And therefore that we don't want to receive that $500,000 this year. Can you set it up in a way that there's a stream of payments that comes in later so that you put whatever they're entitled to in a particular year? I mean, whatever that would push them over the threshold in a particular year, that's the cap that they get, but they still have the right to get additional funding in out years. So you take that money and you stream it out as a receivable. And would that receivable be somehow something that would push them over the edge?
This Chairman, Member Barker, I think that's a great idea. And that's partly the payment structures. We can look at that and we compare of if we do this, how is that going to compare with what they've made in the past? That's fairly easy and straightforward. We have been kind of scratching our head on, okay, how do we quote annualize these payments? And I think that is a really good concept that we'll explore.
Yeah, because the idea is that they would be entitled to the money, but not now. And
Right.
then we would cap their payments so that they don't trip over the edge. And then in years when they're not doing any recharge, that money will come in, and they would still stay under the threshold.
I think that's a really good idea because I have to admit we've been kind of scratching our head about like, how do we annualize this when it can be so variable about when they can recharge and how much they can recharge. There's just so much that goes into that. So I think this is a good alternative that we'll definitely explore.
Yeah, this way you don't have to annualize it. You just say, how much can you get? How much can we give you this year? And we'll give you that amount. And then if we owe you more, we'll give it to you next year or the year after, depending on, where, so that we don't trip over their threshold. And then the issue that for staff is going to be, we got to manage each one of those a little bit more hands-on, because it's not just a simple matter of writing a check every year.
That's absolutely it. It's going to take a little more work on our part, but that's something we can explore and see just how much that would be. I think it's definitely a workable plan that would help spread these payments out, so they're not just getting a big lump sum at one time.
So,
Yeah, the thing is, would that receivable be a problem for them? And that's the tax accounting issue you're going to have to get advice from the nonprofits.
That's something we can definitely explore with them. And so, Mr. Chairman, really all I'm looking at for today is just a voice vote that is the board okay with the plan that I've kind of laid out here.
okay, so before we go there, I just want to ask one more question of Brian
Sure.
Patton. We carry over in our budget, the amount that we budgeted for conveyance fees but didn't use. So this would be a way to distribute that money out to the users and show less of a balance in that reserve. Is that a good thing for the water board?
It is, Madam Chair, it is a good thing for the water board. It would, as Wes says, sometimes you get big years and then you go, several years where we're kind of running on lower recharge amounts. And so we build up a surplus in the amount that we have budgeted for conveyance. And if that can be spread out and dispersed more equally over those years, it makes the budgeting on our side easier. In addition to helping out the canal companies, with their challenges that Wes and Al were just discussing.
Okay, so before us today, though, is a resolution just to keep everything status quo for one more year.
So, Madam Chairman, it's not a resolution, because really the current resolutions have everything in place. This is just looking for, it's just kind of a check-in with the board to make sure we're headed in the right direction.
Right, Madam Chair, the resolutions that the board passed do not have an expiration date, but the contracts with the canal companies and irrigation districts do have an expiration date.
Okay. So we need a motion to extend the contracts for one more year.
Yes.
Madam Chair, this is Dean, so moved.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Is there a second?
Chairman, this is Mark. I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
So Brian, since this involves spending money, should we have done this on a voice vote, not on a voice vote?
Perhaps.
Okay.
I think,
It would be safest.
Okay, let's do that over again. Jennifer, do you want to do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, I can do that. Mr. Barker,
aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon. Pat, you're muted, please. Mr. McMahon,
Aye, sorry.
thank you. Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
and Mr. Van Stone.
Aye.
Okay, it looks like the motion passed. All right. So does that cover the ESA managed recharge? Okay.
As for right now, yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thanks, Wes. So we're on to the next item, non-action item for discussion. Are there any non-action items for discussion? All right. I'm not hearing any. So, next meeting?
Your next meeting is coming up in a couple of weeks in Pocatello. We are looking at the 12th and 13th in Pocatello. There will be a field trip out to see the work being done at American Falls Dam Spillway that you're helping to pay for. And then we have a number of committee meetings in between now and then, a finance committee, an aquifer stabilization committee, and a cloud seeding committee that should all be on your calendars. The 12th and 13th in Pocatello.
Okay, it looks like there might be a lag there. Okay. So I guess that's it. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chairman, I would make a motion that we shall adjourn.
Good choice of words there, Mr. Gibbs. Is there a second?
Madam Chair, I shall make a motion or shall second that motion.
All right, well then we must adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.